Hi, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Gridiron Review. I'm Pete Medhurst alongside Bill Wagner, and Bill, the game of the week lived up to its billing. Second consecutive year, Broadneck puts up huge points on Arundel. Beat them last year to battle unbeaten's 42-14. This year, Wildcats jump out 14-0, only to watch Broadneck score 28 straight. Wildcats rally, and then Broadneck finally wins it in overtime. If you are a fan, how could you not be entertained for your $5 on, well, in this case, Monday night, since the game was pushed from Friday to Monday due to the weather?
Monday Night Lights, and let's give Arundel credit. They had their backs against the wall. They already had 2 losses, could not afford another one. They came out with both fists swinging, got a nice lead, a hell of a game, a really tremendous back-and-forth affair. Aliyah Niamatalolo with the interception in overtime to seal the victory. He had 2 pickoffs in the game. Tremendous effort. Does this spell the end of Arundel's playoff chances, Pete?
Not necessarily. They are right now on the outside looking in. South River, via the bonus points from their Broadneck win, is in the number 4 spot right now in the 4A East, but still games to be played. So I think if Arundel, you look at Arundel's schedule now, they've got pretty much what you would consider all of the tough teams, all the people ahead of them, Old Mill, Annapolis, they're all out of the way.
Right.
So,
unfortunately, they lost 3 of those 4 games.
But so technically, they just went out. If Arundel gets to 7-3,
they have a chance.
I think they're going to be that 4th team. I still do. But we'll see. I mean, those bonus points from that Broadneck win is what putting South River over the top right now. Seahawks beating Meade this past week by a score of 16-8. I was going to say, we were talking about this earlier. When was the last time Chuck Markowitz missed the playoffs at Arundel? Has he ever missed the playoffs at Arundel?
I don't think he has.
Would be the question.
I don't. Maybe one early in his tenure, but not often.
That's a question for the prep notebook for Bob Hoke out there.
Look it up, Bob.
He'll get that answer. But Emmett Davis, 14-yard pass to Robert Schwob with 41 seconds to go in regulation to get Broadneck even in that game after Arundel had rallied back from 28 to 14. It shows you the preparation, but also shows you the talent and the skill and the poise of these kids. It's not easy to operate in a game like that where you jump out on top. Then all of a sudden you're behind 28 to 14. The ranges of emotions for the kids playing the game, the coaches coaching the game. I'm just impressed by the poise of both teams to withstand those haymakers like that and still at the end of the game be able to operate the way you're supposed to. Obviously, a testament to the job that Chuck Markowitz and his staff and the Rob Harris and his staff, what they do for both of those teams.
I agree with you, Pete. And we also should mention we're taping late this week because of the fact all games are held on Monday, except for a few private schools that were able to get their games in. But Friday night here in the Annapolis area, Anne Arundel County area, bad storms, lightning that basically postponed all public school games had to be made up on Monday. So, and that's not easy for these high school kids are used to playing on a Friday, maybe a Saturday, but it's rare to have to come out on a Monday afternoon or a Monday evening and play a ball game.
It's a good thing we had that close game because otherwise we did not have a close game.
Blowout city this weekend.
Outside of South River hanging on to beat Meade 16-8 in that contest. Chesapeake gets 136 yards and 2 touchdowns from Quentin Ford. They subdue Northeast in the Dina Bowl 41-6. There's a great picture of Rashawn Shields in the Capitol. Capitol photographers do a great job. Hey, Rashawn, high and tight, buddy.
Yeah, you're holding
high
that ball
and tight.
a little low,
Don't
buddy.
hold that thing out here.
Like a loaf of bread.
Chesapeake, number 2 right now
in the 3A.
3A East at 4-2. We knew it was a matter of time for Rob Elliott, but they've got to be getting that itch right now at Chesapeake that, hey, we've got a chance to really get ourselves in this mix and bring a playoff berth to Pasadena.
Right. When I was talking to Bob Hoke, who covered the game, the Dina Bowl, and he said that Chesapeake's got some athletes. It does not look like the Chesapeake of about maybe even 4 or 5 years ago. They got some decent athletes down there in Mountain Road.
Well, I mean, let's face it. A lot of them used to go to private school instead because Chesapeake was not a football product you wanted to be a part of. So
they go to Mount St. Joseph.
You would go to any number of private schools going from Pasadena. Rob's getting a lot of those kids to stay home. He's had several of them in the Panthers program feeding into that. I think it makes a huge difference. If it's a cool thing, all of a sudden Chesapeake football is the cool thing in the Pasadena and Gibson Island area, then all of a sudden kids say, well, you know what, maybe I don't have to go sit on the bench for a couple years at Mount St. Joe somewhere else. I can just go to Chesapeake and play right away. Now they're starting to reap some of the benefits of that. And I think Rob deserves a lot of that credit for organizing that with Carl Castellino and the guys with the Panthers football program. Annapolis continues to roll. Nate Vance those for 103 in a blowout win over Severna Park. Nick Goodmalloy right now, if you probably had to poll
Coach of the Year.
Coach of the Year right now, the job that he has done.
And it's really Coach of the Year based off about a 4, because this has been a building job. This isn't just this year. He's been doing this for about 3 years. So if he won Coach of the Year for this season, it would be reflective of the job he's been doing for about 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, building block by building block, and the Panthers right now poised at number 2 in the 4A, or number 3 rather, in the 4A East race behind Old Mill and North Point. Glen Burnie had 3 guys run for over 100 yards and a 36-2 win over Southern. And at some point, I mean, we continue to see here, you know, you've got 4A versus 2A. You've got 3 running backs at Glen Burnie that ran for 100 yards each.
He had 510 total rushing yards.
That just tells me the numbers right now, the scales are tipped against Southern in terms of, you know, school population. And right now, they just don't have the number of bodies to compete with the 4A schools and give Glen Burnie a lot of credit. A lot of coaches at that point would try to get fancy and do some things. If it's not broke, you don't have to fix it. And they just kept running the ball and had great success.
Right. Well, and I have had a discussion with Southern coach Russ Myers about this, and I'm starting to believe what his opinion is. Southern needs to change their schedule. Anne Arundel County needs to ease up and stop making Southern play all the 4A schools in the county every year. Give them a 6 or 7 game county schedule and let Russ schedule 3 or 4 outside games against competition that looks similar to Southern. When he played against a smaller school to start the year, they won. They need to be able to start playing more comparable competition, because this is just, it's hard on the kids to have to do this every week.
And they're the only team within their region, too, also in 2A South, that faces this kind of scheduling dilemma.
It's not fair.
Now, I will say, years ago, when they made the playoffs and when they went to the state semifinals,
it benefited
them because they were playing a lot of 4A schools. But that was that once-in-a-lifetime group. When you have a player the caliber of a Devontae Burke who can, you know, is a game breaker at any time, but you're not always going to have those types of players.
Or back in the day when they had Corey Conti and Jamar Mullen, 2 Division I players on the same team, but that's just not the case anymore at Southern. They're really thin, and they're just playing Old Mill and Arundel and Broadneck. I mean, it just never ends. I mean,
they play Old Mill this week.
Oh God.
Old Mill, by the way, won this week, 67-6. It was 60-0, I believe, at halftime.
Before Chad McCormick called off the dogs.
Well, he probably called him off way before that. David Morocco, 148 yards throwing and 5 scores in that contest. So right now, certainly it's Old Mill's party, and everybody else is trying to get up there on the podium with them. Private school-wise, Evan Fochtman and Spalding, not maybe Bill surprised that they beat Calvert Hall, but they manhandled them.
Right.
Calvert Hall had been playing well, had worked their way back into the state top 25 this past week. But right now, Kyle Schmidt and that Spalding Cavaliers team really has it rolling. They get the ultimate litmus test this week as they take on the Big G.
All right, well, I'm sure, I can guarantee you, because I've been following it, Spalding has never beaten Calvert Hall this badly. I think they did beat Calvert Hall once since they joined the A Conference, but it was a close game. They've never beaten them this badly. This game against Gilman is going to be a huge test.
St. Mary's rolling along now at 5-1. Patrick Hines and the gang, they really seem to have an offense that has developed some diversity. A lot of guys doing a lot of things right now, sitting at 5-1 after another good win this week.
All right, and they're a factor in the B Conference, and they have a big game coming up this week against Curley, who I believe is a defending champ, but has always been in the mix, a contender. Curley beat Severn pretty handily this past weekend. So that's a big game for the Saints.
Yeah, no doubt. St. Mary's sitting at 5-1, so a couple of good private schools there, and along with Annapolis area Christian schools. So still a lot of hardware for them to play for as this season goes along. When we come back, Bill and I will touch on the colleges from this past week. One coach is gone, and one team's unbeaten record is gone. We'll talk about that when we join you again on the Gridiron Review. Welcome back to the Gridiron Review. Bill, I think at some point it was becoming apparent that Maryland was going to pull the plug on Randy Edsall. I'm not sure what pulling the plug on him through 6 games into the season, I'm not sure what that purpose serves. You can certainly indicate that, you know, people were pretty familiar with it. They were going to pull the plug at the end of the season. But For Maryland now, interesting that over these last 6 games, this can go one of two ways for the Terrapins. Of course, a bye week this week before taking on Penn State, which on the surface, still a big game for the program.
Yeah, I don't get what the reason with firing Randy Edsall during the season. I'm not sure what that accomplishes. Maybe the uncertainty regarding Randy Edsall's future was affecting recruiting. By doing it now, you're sending a clear message that, yes, we are going to get rid of Edsall, but we're moving in a different direction. Mike Locksley is named interim head coach. That's not because of his coaching acumen. It's because of recruiting. Mike Locksley was responsible for getting Dwayne Haskins, Tino Ellis from DeMatha, and a whole horde of other local players. They want to keep that DMV movement that they've been touting and pushing. They want to keep that together and make sure those local recruits still come. But here's the deal. This means that Mike Locksley is going to have to be retained by the next coach, because signing day is not till February. You've got to hire another head coach between now and then. But if you get rid of Mike Locksley prior to signing date, you risk losing all of those local recruits.
I think it's possible, but we say that all the time. A lot of times we say that in terms of basketball too. It's the same way. If you fire this coach, and you lose that staff. I think Dwayne Haskins is committed to the uniform. I think Dwayne Haskins is coming no matter what.
Maryland better hope that's the case.
But here's my point. Mike Locksley brings in some players. He hasn't delivered the best Maryland players because they all go somewhere else for the most part. That's what
they're trying to turn around this year.
It's a fact of life. But here's what I don't understand with Mike Locksley. His track record. All you got to do is do a background check on him. Issues at Illinois, 2-26 as head coach at New Mexico, off-field issues there at New Mexico. His unit is one of the problems of the University of Maryland. It's one of the worst units on the team. There's no player development within that unit. Who's responsible for that? The
Right.
offensive coordinator in this situation. The guy, certainly a hard worker, great guy in the living room as a recruiter.
Right.
But at some point, that's what his role needs to be.
Well, that's what, if I was the new head coach, I would keep Mike Locksley and I would tell him you're the running backs coach or you're the quarterbacks coach, and bring in my own offensive coordinator. If he doesn't like that, then he can move on. But at least you haven't fired him. He's moved on of his own volition, and that gives you an out with the recruits. But that's what I would say, is that he does have value to the staff as a recruiter.
But that's it.
He shouldn't be the offensive
But that's it. To me, that's it. His unit shows no progress, and that's on him as far as I'm concerned. And I think that has to be taken into account here. If you're the new coach, which I'm hoping is either Justin Fuente of Memphis or Matt Rule of Temple, because
good choices.
That's realistically where Maryland needs to go.
Well, somebody had to float out Chip Kelly, of
Not
course.
happening. Chip Kelly would take the SC job, I'm sure, 10 times out of 10 over Maryland, or the South Carolina job over the Maryland job.
I agree.
So,
I agree.
Maryland's not getting that guy.
That's a pipe dream.
It's not happening. It's not happening. Enjoy basketball season.
We should say that they did play a game. They lost to Ohio State, but not quite as badly as
They gave
many
a great
expected.
effort. It was tied at 21, and again, at some point, Ohio State finally wrestled control of the game. I at least like the fact that they're going to stick with Perry Hills.
That's why I wanted to bring
one
up.
Quarterback and just go with it
That's
for the
what they
rest
need
of
to
the
do.
year.
Right. Perry Hills, we've seen Caleb Rowe as an interception machine. Dax Garman, frankly, I don't see it. He has shown nothing. Just let Perry Hills be the quarterback. Let him grow in the offense.
All right. Meanwhile, Navy, 2 plays to define their game against Notre Dame. Right there with the Irish, tied at 21 late in the first half. But the Mids contributed by fumbling it at their own 7. 1 play later, Notre Dame scored a touchdown. Opening kickoff of the second half, they fumble. Notre Dame scores a couple plays later. Really, those 2 plays right there, Bill, define the entire game, and the Mids fall for the first time this year at South Bend.
Right. Well, Coach Ken Niumatalolo said we have to play a near-perfect game to upset Notre Dame. It was far from perfect. In addition to the turnovers, there were some other mistakes, penalties, personal fouls that you don't expect out of Navy, some missed assignments. Keenan Reynolds got hurt because of a missed blocking assignment. The way the film showed, he should have been pitching the ball because a block should have occurred that enabled him to go around the corner, and he would have made a pitch instead of cutting it up and being hit and ended up getting injured. Thank God he's okay.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Mids with a bye week, Maryland with a bye week. Navy will be home October 24th for their homecoming game with Tulane as they try to go 3-0 in the American Athletic Conference. Redskins and Ravens when we return right here on the Gridiron Review. Welcome back. Heartbreak City for the Ravens and the Redskins this week, both falling in overtime. Washington losing to undefeated Atlanta. Bill, the Ravens losing to, at that time, one-win Cleveland, who was trailed 21-9 in that game, only to rally behind Josh McCown, 457 yards, touchdowns
like
to Travis. Yeah, I mean, this by far, this might be the worst defense in Ravens history.
It's sad. It's really sad to see. They can't stop anybody, especially when the game is on the line. I mean, poor Ravens fans. The win over Pittsburgh.
Poor Ravens fans.
Well, I'm saying they got
had enough success.
It's the same as with
poor
Redskins
fans.
Right. No,
We're the ones that haven't had a lot of success.
But what I mean is that there was a glimmer of hope after the win over Pittsburgh,
Right.
and you thought, "Hey, we'll beat Cleveland at home." We always beat Cleveland at home. Then all of a sudden, we're back to 2-1 in the conference, in the division. We're 2 wins, and instead, season's over.
You lose 2 games at home, more importantly, in the division.
They never
Cincinnati
lose at
and
home.
Cleveland,
Yep.
and which they've never done. So that's something that really hurts the Ravens.
And the
there.
injury issues are mounting. Lost another cornerback, Will Davis, I believe, is done
torn
for the
ACL.
year.
Brought in Sharice Wright, the former Charger and 49er. Brought back Asa Jackson off the practice squad. I mean, basically, it's rent a corner right now for the Ravens.
Well, and their defensive secondary is terrible. They don't get any pass rush. You're right. You called it, Pete. It's got to be the worst Ravens defense that has been seen in years.
Meanwhile, the Redskins, with 24 seconds to go in regulation, down, rally, get the field goal from Dustin Hopkins, go to overtime, driving, get to the 50-yard line. Receiver falls down. Kirk Cousins throws an interception, and it goes for the game-winning score. I think even at 2-3, you have to admit through 5 games, these are not the same Washington Redskins we've seen over the past few years.
They're improved. Well, before we go further, let me ask you this. Is that the fault of should Kirk Cousins have thrown that ball? Because it looked to me like, you could say it's a timing route and he had to get the ball out, but it looked to me like the receiver fell before Cousins released the ball.
You don't know if he can see that, though.
Right.
And that's when you're throwing outside the numbers, that ball's got to come out, and that's what Jay Gruden said this week. I mean, it's just really bad luck. I mean,
it was just terrible luck. I mean,
that's what it is.
Pick 6. It couldn't be any worse. But no, I agree with you, Pete. They're an improved ball club. They're better defensively, and they seem to be starting to find a little bit of an offensive identity. And hopefully, Jay Gruden is getting some support within the organization, and because really they need some stability. And it seems to me like he's doing a pretty good job.
Yeah, we'll see. They got to be able to run the ball, see if they can do that against a very tough Jets defense, who's coached now, of course, that team coached by former Redskin Todd Bowles. Want to point out one thing this week. There was one whale of a youth football game in 12 and under this week. South River and Old Mill, 39-39, double overtime at the 12 and under level.
That is amazing.
It's a terrific, terrific football game. Congratulations to those kids on just an amazing football game.
Had you seen this coming with these 2 clubs? Are they that?
South River's been decent in that age group. They really have. And, just to see 2 teams whack it out like that and play through the overtime sessions, that's just a great competitive football game. And that's what you're looking for. You're looking for every game to be competitive most weeks. And that game pretty much epitomizes what you want out of youth football each and every Saturday as we continue to wind down. Week 7 in the books. Week 8 coming up as we continue to roll toward the playoffs. As always, go to aacounty.org, get on the Recreation and Parks page, go to team schedules, and go out and watch a youth football league. There's one in your community every Saturday. That'll do it for us this week. For Bill Wagner, I'm Pete Medhurst. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week on the Gridiron Review.